We need to talk about the thing that's coming from the dark. Not a comet, not an asteroid, something far larger, far more massive, far more dangerous, a planet, or something like a planet, but not orbiting a star, not part of any solar system, just drifting through the galaxy, through the vast spaces between stars, following its own trajectory through the darkness. A rogue planet. Ejected from whatever star system formed it, cast out into interstellar space billions of years ago, wandering the galaxy ever since. Cold, dark, invisible until it gets very close to something with light to reflect. And it's close now. Close to our solar system. Close enough that we've detected it, calculated its trajectory, understood what's about to happen. It's going to pass through the solar system. Not hit Earth. The odds of direct collision are infinitesimally small. But it doesn't need to hit us. It just needs to pass close enough that its gravity affects the orbits of the planets, destabilizes the careful balance that's existed for 4.6 billion years. And it's massive. Not planet-sized in the sense of Earth or Mars. Bigger, much bigger. Initial estimates suggest it's several times Jupiter's mass. Possibly a brown dwarf, a failed star that never quite achieved fusion, drifting through space like a cosmic ghost. It's approaching from below the plane of the solar system, from the direction of the galactic south, where our telescopes don't spend much time looking because there's not much there. But now there's this intruder, this massive object that shouldn't be here, that's violated the pristine architecture of our solar system just by entering it. We spotted it 6 months ago, a moving shadow against the background stars detected by automated surveys looking for exactly this kind of threat. At first, we thought it was a distant asteroid. Then we realised it was much larger, much farther out, moving with tremendous velocity. And when we calculated its trajectory, when we ran the simulations, when we understood what was going to happen, the astronomical community reacted with something between terror and fascination. This is unprecedented. We've theorised about rogue planets for decades, predicted they might exist, suspected the galaxy is full of them. But we'd never detected one approaching our solar system, never had to face the reality of a massive intruder disrupting planetary orbits. Now we are facing it. The rogue planet will reach the inner solar system in 18 months. Its closest approach to Earth will occur about 2 years from now, and by then, the solar system as we know it, the stable, predictable orbits that have allowed life to flourish on Earth, will be fundamentally changed. Let's understand what we're facing. Let's map the gravitational catastrophe that unfolds when a massive object passes through a carefully balanced planetary system. Rogue planets are ejected from their birth systems through gravitational interactions. When a planetary system forms, not all planets remain in stable orbits. Some get flung out by close encounters with other planets, by interactions with the parent star, by perturbations during the chaotic early period of system formation. These ejected planets don't stop existing. They just stop being part of a solar system. They drift through interstellar space, dark and cold, no longer warmed by a star, following trajectories determined by their ejection velocity and the galaxy's gravitational field. The galaxy is probably full of them. More rogue planets than stars, some estimates suggest. They're just invisible. No light to emit, no nearby star to illuminate them. Too cold to show up in infrared surveys until they're very close. This one, we're calling it Nemesis, after the Greek goddess of retribution, is enormous. Mass estimates keep being revised upward as we gather more data. Current best estimate, 8 Jupiter masses, definitely a brown dwarf, technically. A substellar object, massive enough to have deuterium fusion in its core, but not massive enough for hydrogen fusion, not massive enough to be a true star, but mass enough to disrupt every planet in the solar system. 8 Jupiter masses means Nemesis has about 2,500 times Earth's mass. Its gravity well is deep. Anything that gets close will feel enormous tidal forces, and close in gravitational terms is millions of kilometers. Nemesis is currently about 50 astronomical units from the Sun, 50 times Earth's distance from the Sun out beyond Neptune's orbit. It's approaching at 26 kilometers per second relative to the Sun. Not particularly fast for an interstellar object, but fast enough that it will traverse the solar system in a few years, and as it approaches, its gravity will reach out and touch everything: planets, moons, asteroids, comets. The entire architecture of the solar system will feel the pull of this intruder, and orbits will change. Let's walk through what happens, month by month, as Nemesis approaches and the solar system begins to unravel. Month 0. Discovery. Nemesis is 50 AU out, moving toward the inner solar system at an angle. Astronomers have just confirmed its mass and trajectory. The calculations are being refined, but the basic picture is clear. In about 18 months, Nemesis will pass within 5 AU of the Sun, just inside Jupiter's orbit. 5 AU sounds far. It's 750 million kilometers, but at 8 Jupiter masses, Nemesis will exert significant gravitational influence even at that distance. Every planet will experience perturbations. Some will have their orbits expanded, some contracted. Some will have their orbital eccentricity increased, making their orbits more elliptical. Earth's fate depends on exactly how close Nemesis passes, at what angle, with what timing relative to Earth's position in its orbit. The simulations are running constantly, being refined as we gather more data about Nemesis's trajectory. The early results are not encouraging. Month 3. Nemesis is now visible to large amateur telescopes as a faint reddish dot. It's still 45 AU away, but it's reflecting enough sunlight that dedicated observers can find it if they know where to look. The astronomical community is in crisis mode. Every major telescope is tracking Nemesis, measuring its position, refining the trajectory calculations. Space agencies are running thousands of simulations trying to predict the exact effects on each planet's orbit. And the news is being released to the public carefully, gradually. A large object is passing through the outer solar system. It may cause minor perturbations to planetary orbits. We're monitoring the situation closely, but the scientists know it's not minor. The most likely scenarios show Earth's orbit being significantly altered. In some simulations, Earth's orbit becomes more elliptical, creating extreme seasonal temperature variations. In others, Earth's distance from the Sun changes, either closer, making the planet too hot, or farther, triggering a permanent ice age. In the worst simulations, Earth is ejected from the solar system entirely, flung into interstellar space by a gravitational slingshot effect as Nemesis passes. The probability is low, maybe 2%, but non-zero, and there's nothing we can do. You can't deflect a planet mass object. You can't change its trajectory. You can only watch it come and hope the gravitational interactions aren't too severe. Month 6. Nemesis is now visible to the naked eye under dark skies. It's a dim reddish star-like point, growing slowly brighter each night. Most people still don't know what it is, don't understand the threat. But astronomers are watching in fascinated horror as this massive object approaches. The outer planets are already being affected. Neptune's orbit is showing measurable changes. Uranus is experiencing increased orbital eccentricity. Jupiter, massive Jupiter, the solar system's gravitational anchor, is being perturbed by this intruder that's even more massive, and the asteroid belt is beginning to destabilize. Nemesis's gravity is pulling on countless asteroids, changing their orbits, sending some toward the inner solar system. The first Earth-crossing asteroids perturbed by Nemesis are being detected. We're tracking them, calculating impact probabilities, preparing for the possibility that Nemesis's first effect on Earth might be an asteroid bombardment. The public is becoming aware now. Nemesis is in the news. Scientists are doing interviews, explaining what's happening, trying to be reassuring while being honest about the uncertainties. Yes, a massive object is passing through the solar system. Yes, it will affect planetary orbits. No, we don't know exactly how severe the effects will be. We're continuing to refine our predictions. But privately, among themselves, the scientists are more blunt. This is bad, potentially catastrophic, and it's going to get worse as Nemesis gets closer. Month 9. Nemesis is now a bright red object in the night sky, brighter than most stars. It's still far away, 30 AU, about Neptune's distance, but it's massive enough and reflective enough that it dominates the southern sky for observers in the southern hemisphere. People are watching it every night, watching it grow, watching this intruder approach, this object that doesn't belong, that's violating the solar system's space, and the effects are intensifying. Jupiter's orbit is measurably different now. Saturn is experiencing orbital perturbations. The asteroid belt is in chaos. Thousands of asteroids on new trajectories, some heading inward toward the rocky planets. The first asteroid strikes occur. Small ones mostly. Meteorites that would have missed Earth entirely on their original orbits, but have been perturbed by Nemesis's gravity. They burn up in the atmosphere, create bright fireballs, remind everyone that the sky is no longer safe. And the climate is changing. Not from Nemesis directly. It's too far away to affect Earth's temperature, but from the psychological impact. People are afraid. Markets are unstable. Some are preparing for the worst, stockpiling supplies, building shelters. Others are partying, living hedonistically, figuring that if the world is ending, they might as well enjoy the time remaining. Governments are trying to maintain order, trying to keep society functioning, trying to prepare for whatever comes next while not triggering panic. It's a delicate balance, and they're not always succeeding. Month 12. Nemesis is now one of the brightest objects in the night sky. It's dimmer than the Moon, but brighter than Venus. It's moved from the southern sky toward the ecliptic, the plane where the planets orbit, becoming visible from both hemispheres. And it's grown. Not physically, it's still the same size it always was. But it's closer now, and in the sky closer means larger. Through telescopes, you can see it as a disk, not just a point. A reddish-brown sphere, faintly glowing from its own internal heat, reflecting sunlight from its atmosphere. It's beautiful, in a terrible way. This rogue world, this wanderer, this intruder in our home system. And the gravitational effects are severe now. Mars's orbit has changed significantly. It's on a more elliptical path, getting closer to Earth at some times, farther at others. Jupiter is experiencing the strongest perturbations it's had in billions of years. Some of its moons are at risk. Their orbits around Jupiter are being affected by Nemesis's gravity, potentially leading to collisions or ejections. And Earth is feeling it. Not dramatically yet, not in ways the average person would notice. But the scientists see it in the data. Earth's orbital velocity is changing. Its distance from the Sun is changing. The perturbations are small so far, but they're growing as Nemesis approaches. The predictions are being refined constantly. Some scenarios have improved. We've ruled out some of the worst outcomes as we've gathered better data on Nemesis's trajectory. But the most likely scenarios are still severe. Earth's orbit will be altered. The question is, how much? Will it be a small change? Something we can adapt to? Or a large one, making Earth uninhabitable? We're going to find out. Nemesis is now less than 20 AU away. Its closest approach is only 6 months out, and there's nothing we can do but watch. Month 15. Nemesis is now the brightest object in the night sky except for the Moon. It's visible even in cities, even with light pollution. Everyone on Earth can see it. Everyone knows what it is, and everyone is watching as it grows larger, night by night, week by week. It's no longer a point of light. It's clearly a disk to the naked eye. Reddish-brown, slightly fuzzy at the edges where its atmosphere diffuses light. Through binoculars or small telescopes you can see details, bands in the atmosphere, darker regions that might be storms, a hint of structure to this failed star that's invading our system, and the solar system is in chaos. Jupiter has captured a comet that was perturbed by Nemesis. The comet crashed into Jupiter's atmosphere, creating a visible impact scar. Saturn's rings are showing anomalies. Gravitational interactions are causing waves and gaps to appear. The asteroid belt is so disrupted that asteroid warnings are constant. We're tracking thousands of objects on new trajectories, trying to predict which ones might threaten Earth. 3 asteroids have hit Earth so far. None were large enough to cause global catastrophe, but one hit the Pacific and created a tsunami that killed thousands. Another struck Siberia, creating a crater and shockwave. The third was small, landing in the Australian outback, but it was a reminder that we're under bombardment, that Nemesis is weaponizing the asteroid belt against us, and Earth's orbit is changing visibly now. The orbital period, 365.25 days, is increasing. Not by much, just a few seconds so far, but it's measurable, it's accelerating, and it means Earth is moving farther from the Sun. The climate models are running. If Earth's orbit expands by 5%, global temperatures will drop by several degrees. If it expands by 10%, we face a permanent ice age. If it expands by 20%, we won't survive 20%. Month 18. Nemesis is 2 weeks from its closest approach. It's enormous in the sky now, larger than any planet ever appears from Earth. Larger than Mars at opposition. Approaching the apparent size of Jupiter, as seen from some of its inner moons. It's not close, not really. It's still millions of kilometers away, but it's so massive that millions of kilometers is close enough. Its gravity is pulling on Earth with a force we can measure with seismometers. Tiny tidal effects, barely noticeable, but real. The planet is being tugged by an external gravity source for the first time in billions of years, and the effects on the solar system are catastrophic. Mars has been pushed onto a collision course with one of the asteroid belt's largest objects. The collision will occur in 6 months, and Mars will experience an impact that will dwarf anything in its geological history. Jupiter's moon, Io, is spiraling inward. Nemesis's gravity has altered its orbit around Jupiter, and it's going to crash into the gas giant within the year. Saturn's rings are disrupting. The gravitational perturbations are causing ring material to either fall into Saturn or escape into independent orbits. And Earth's orbital velocity has changed by nearly 1%. That doesn't sound like much, but 1% change in velocity means a several percent change in orbital radius. Earth is moving away from the Sun, slowly but inexorably. The simulations all agree now. By the time Nemesis leaves the inner solar system, Earth's orbit will have expanded by 7%, maybe 8%, enough to trigger a permanent ice age, enough to make the planet marginal for human habitability, enough to end civilization as we know it, and there's nothing we can do but watch it happen. Closest approach, day 0, Nemesis passes within 4.8 AU of the Sun. It's at its brightest now, dominating the night sky, visible even during the day as a reddish disk near the horizon. It's larger in apparent size than any planet we've ever seen from Earth, a constant reminder that something massive and wrong is in our sky. For 12 hours as Earth rotates, everyone gets a chance to see Nemesis at its closest. It rises, crosses the sky, sets. Billions of people watch, knowing that this is the moment of maximum danger, the point where Nemesis's gravitational effects are strongest. And the effects are immediate and dramatic. Earth's tides go haywire. The ocean experiences tidal forces from 3 sources now: the Moon, the Sun, and Nemesis. The combination creates unprecedented tidal ranges in some locations. High tides meters higher than normal, low tides exposing seafloor that's usually underwater. Coastal cities flood. Not catastrophically, this isn't a tsunami, but significantly. Seawater pushes into streets, into buildings, into infrastructure not designed for this level of water. Some coastal areas have to evacuate temporarily until the tidal effects subside. The solid Earth flexes too. Not visibly, not in ways most people can feel, but measurably. Seismometers detect the planet slightly deforming under Nemesis's tidal forces. It's tiny, millimeters of deformation, but it's real. The planet is being squeezed by external gravity, and the atmosphere responds. The gravitational gradient from Nemesis is subtle, but it affects atmospheric pressure distributions, creates unusual weather patterns. Storms form in unexpected locations, wind patterns shift. The atmosphere, like the ocean, is experiencing tidal effects from an external massive body, but these are just the immediate temporary effects. The real damage is to Earth's orbit, and that damage is permanent. As Nemesis passes, its gravity tugs Earth into a slightly different trajectory. The orbital velocity changes, the distance from the Sun changes, and when Nemesis moves away, when its gravitational influence fades, Earth is left on a new orbit, one that will determine the planet's climate for millions of years to come. Day 1. After closest approach, Nemesis is receding now, moving away from the Sun, heading back out into interstellar space. It will leave the solar system in about 2 years, will fade from view over months, will eventually disappear back into the darkness from which it came. But it's left behind chaos. Earth's new orbit is being calculated, the data is being gathered, the measurements refined, the models updated, and the picture is becoming clear. Earth's orbital radius has increased by 7.3%. Earth is now orbiting at 1.73 AU instead of 1.0 AU. That's about 11 million kilometers farther from the Sun than before Nemesis arrived. 11 million kilometers doesn't sound like much in a solar system, where Jupiter orbits at 780 million kilometers from the Sun. But the Sun's energy output follows the inverse square law. At 1.073 AU, Earth receives about 13% less solar energy than it did at 1.0 AU, 13% less sunlight, 13% less energy driving the climate, warming the oceans, powering photosynthesis, maintaining the temperatures that make Earth habitable. That's enough. That's more than enough. Earth is entering an ice age. Not immediately. The planet has thermal inertia. Oceans store heat. The atmosphere moderates temperature changes. But the cooling has begun, and it will continue, accelerating as positive feedback loops engage. Snow falls and doesn't melt, reflecting more sunlight. Glaciers expand, increasing albedo further. The ocean cools, absorbing less CO2, changing circulation patterns. Each change amplifies the cooling, drives the temperature lower, makes the ice age more severe. The models predict that within a decade, global average temperatures will drop by 5 degrees Celsius, within a century by 10 degrees or more. Much of North America, Europe and Asia will be under ice sheets. The tropical regions will become temperate. The temperate regions will become Arctic. Earth is becoming a different planet, still habitable, barely, but radically changed from the world that existed before Nemesis arrived. Week 1. Nemesis is farther away now, smaller in the sky, still visible but fading. The immediate crisis of closest approach is over. The tidal effects are subsiding. The unusual weather is calming. But the realization is setting in. Earth's orbit has changed. The climate will change. And there's no fixing this. We can't push Earth back to its original orbit. We don't have the technology to move planets. We don't have the energy to counteract the gravitational effects of an 8 Jupiter mass object. We're stuck with the consequences. Governments are beginning to plan for the ice age, agricultural shifts, moving farming to lower latitudes, developing crops that can grow in shorter, cooler seasons. Infrastructure changes, insulating buildings, improving heating systems, preparing for harsher winters. But these are adaptations, not solutions. We can make life survivable in the ice age. We can't prevent the ice age from happening, and we can't support 8 billion people in an ice age. The carrying capacity of Earth is going to drop dramatically as arable land disappears under ice, as growing seasons shorten, as energy demands for heating increase. The population will drop. Not from direct deaths, not mostly, but from famine, from disease, from the stresses of living in a world that's becoming progressively less habitable. We've been given a death sentence, not immediate execution, but a slow decline, a gradual worsening of conditions that will stretch across generations, and all because a rogue planet passed through our solar system, perturbing our orbit by a few percent, pushing us just far enough from the sun that the ice returns. Month 21. Nemesis is now 15 AU away, and receding fast. It's still visible to the naked eye, but faint, requiring dark skies. It's no longer the dominant object in our awareness. The crisis feels over, even though the consequences are just beginning. The temperature is dropping, not dramatically yet. It's only been 3 months since closest approach, but measurably. Global average temperature is down by 0.3 degrees Celsius. That's within natural variation, but the trend is clear and accelerating. The first snows of the new ice age are falling, in regions that don't normally see snow. In seasons that should be too warm, the weather is changing and people are noticing. And the other planets are dealing with their own consequences. Mars has been struck by the asteroid Nemesis, perturbed from the belt. The impact was visible from Earth, a brilliant flash on Mars's surface, followed by an expanding dust cloud that's now covering much of the planet. The impact was large enough to create a crater hundreds of kilometers across, large enough to affect Mars's climate for years or decades. Not that Mars has much climate to affect, but the dust will settle, the crater will remain, and Mars will carry the scar of Nemesis's passage for geological timescales. Jupiter's moon, Io, has crashed into Jupiter. The impact released enormous energy. Io was massive, moving fast, and Jupiter's gravity accelerated it to tens of kilometers per second before impact. The collision created a disturbance in Jupiter's atmosphere that's visible even from Earth, a dark scar where Io plunged through the cloud layers and into the gas giant's interior. Io is gone. One of the solar system's most geologically active bodies, a moon we'd studied for decades, has ceased to exist, consumed by its parent planet as a consequence of Nemesis's gravitational meddling. And Saturn's rings are disrupted, not destroyed. The rings still exist, but rearranged. New gaps have appeared. The classic ring structure is changed. Saturn looks different now, will look different for millions of years until the rings restabilize. The solar system has been reshaped by this intruder, not destroyed, not sterilized, but changed. Orbits have shifted, moons have been lost. The careful balance that existed for billions of years has been upset, and the new equilibrium will be different. We're living through one of the most significant events in solar system history, and we can't do anything but adapt. Year 1. After closest approach, Nemesis is 25 AU away, faint and receding. It will leave the solar system in another year, will become undetectable to all but the largest telescopes, will return to being an invisible wanderer drifting through the galaxy. But it's left its mark, Earth's average. Temperature is down 1.5 degrees Celsius. The cooling is accelerating as feedback loops engage. Snow that fell last winter didn't completely melt in summer, remaining as persistent snowpack. Glaciers that had been retreating for decades are advancing. Sea ice is expanding at both poles. The Arctic Ocean is freezing over earlier in the fall, staying frozen later in the spring. The ice cap that had been shrinking is growing again. Not back to pre-industrial levels yet, but the trend is clear, and agriculture is suffering. Growing seasons are shorter, harvests are smaller. The major grain-producing regions of North America, Europe and Asia are experiencing crop failures as frosts come earlier and last longer. Food prices are spiking, not to famine levels yet. There are stockpiles, reserves, buffers built into the system. But those buffers are being depleted, and if the cooling continues as predicted, if the ice age fully develops, those buffers won't be enough. The global population is beginning to migrate. Not massive movements yet, but trends. People in high-latitude regions are moving toward the equator. Cities in Canada, Northern Europe, Russia are seeing population declines as residents relocate to warmer climates. But the equatorial regions are already densely populated. They can't absorb unlimited migration. Tensions are rising, borders are closing, conflicts are emerging over resources, over territory, over the right to live in regions that will remain habitable as the ice advances. This is the beginning of the demographic catastrophe, the first stages of a population crash that will play out over decades as Earth's carrying capacity shrinks. Year 5 after closest approach. The Ice Age is undeniable now. Global average temperature is down 4 degrees Celsius from pre-Nemesis levels. The cooling is continuing, though the rate is slowing as the planet approaches a new equilibrium with the reduced solar input. Ice sheets are forming in northern Canada, Scandinavia, and Siberia. They're not massive yet, not the kilometers-thick continental glaciers of previous ice ages, but they're growing, advancing southward, covering land that was forested or populated. The cities of northern regions are being abandoned. Calgary, Edmonton, Stockholm, Helsinki, Novosibirsk. These cities are becoming uninhabitable as winters last most of the year, as summers are brief and cold as the ice advances. The populations are moving south. Hundreds of millions of people relocating, creating refugee crises, overwhelming the capacities of destination countries. Some nations are accepting refugees. Others are closing borders, militarizing frontiers, refusing entry to desperate populations fleeing the advancing ice. Wars are breaking out. Not major global wars, not yet, but regional conflicts over resources, over territory, over migration. The stress of the changing climate is breaking down international cooperation, creating competition where there was once collaboration, and food production has crashed. Global grain production is down 40% from pre-Nemesis levels. The major breadbaskets, the Great Plains, Ukraine, the Canadian prairies, are either too cold to farm or have been abandoned to the ice. What remains is the equatorial and subtropical agriculture, and it's not enough to feed 8 billion people. The population is dropping. Starvation, disease, violence, the die-off has begun. The global population is down to 7 billion and falling. Some projections suggest it will stabilise at 3 or 4 billion, some say lower. This is Nemesis's gift to Earth, a return to Ice Age conditions, a massive population crash, a transformation of human civilization from global and interconnected to regional and survival focused. And it all happened because a rogue planet passed through our solar system and perturbed our orbit by 7.3%. Let's talk about what we couldn't do, because unlike asteroid impacts or even some supernovae, there's truly nothing we can do about rogue planets. We can't detect them far in advance. They're dark, cold, invisible until they're close. We spotted Nemesis with 6 months warning because of automated surveys and lucky timing. We might have had less warning. We might have had none. We can't deflect them. Asteroids can theoretically be deflected with enough warning and technology. Planets can't. Even if we had decades of warning, even if we devoted all of Earth's resources to the problem, we couldn't change Nemesis's trajectory. It's simply too massive. We can't shield against gravitational effects. You can shield against radiation with mass. You can build underground to avoid surface catastrophes. But you can't shield against gravity. It permeates everything, affects everything, and there's no material that blocks it. We can't move Earth to compensate. We don't have the technology to alter Earth's orbit. Even if we did, the energy requirements would be astronomical, literally. Moving Earth back to 1.0 AU would require more energy than humanity has ever produced in its entire history, so we're helpless. We watch the rogue planet approach, watch it pass through our system, watch it perturb our orbit, and then watch it leave while we deal with the consequences. This is perhaps the purest form of cosmic helplessness. Not sudden catastrophe where you might not have time to feel afraid. Not distant threat you can tell yourself won't happen. but slow, visible, inevitable disaster that you can see coming for months and still can't prevent. Nemesis was visible in the sky for over a year. Everyone on Earth saw it. Everyone watched it grow, watched it approach, watched it pass, and everyone understood, at least intellectually, that this object was destroying our world's climate, and we could do nothing but watch. Let's talk about the psychological impact of watching a planet killer approach in slow motion, because this is different from any other catastrophe we've discussed. Asteroid impacts are sudden. One moment you're alive, the next you're not. There's terror, but it's brief. The knowing is brief. And for many, there's no knowing at all, just instant oblivion. Nemesis gave us time. 18 months from detection to closest approach. 18 months of watching this massive object grow in the sky, of knowing exactly what was going to happen, of understanding the consequences while being unable to prevent them. That's a unique form of torture. Anticipatory grief, not just for yourself, but for your entire civilization, played out over months as you watch the instrument of your destruction approach. Some people couldn't handle it. Suicide rates spiked during Nemesis's approach. Not everyone wants to watch the world end slowly. Some preferred to end on their own terms, to exit before the worst happened. Others responded with hedonism. If the world is ending, if civilization is going to collapse, why not enjoy the time remaining? Why not break rules, indulge desires, live without concern for consequences when consequences are irrelevant? Some turned to religion, saw Nemesis as judgment, as apocalypse, as the end times prophesied in various texts, found comfort or terror in the idea that this was ordained, that there was meaning in the catastrophe, even if that meaning was punishment. And some responded with work. Scientists studying Nemesis obsessively, engineers developing technologies that might help with the coming ice age, governments planning for population relocations and agricultural shifts, finding purpose in the response even when the catastrophe itself couldn't be prevented. None of these responses are wrong. They're all human reactions to unprecedented circumstances, to knowing your world is dying and being forced to watch it happen. But there's something particularly cruel about the slowness, about having time to think, to understand, to anticipate, about watching the object that's killing your world grow larger night after night, knowing exactly when it will arrive and what will happen when it does. If Nemesis had appeared suddenly, if we'd only discovered it a week before closest approach, the psychological impact would have been shock and terror, but brief. 18 months of slow approach is a different kind of suffering, a prolonged grief, a watching of your world die in increments. And now, years after closest approach, the suffering continues. The ice age is here, the population is crashing, and Nemesis is gone, disappeared back into the darkness, leaving us to deal with the consequences alone. Let's shift perspective now. Let's move from the immediate catastrophe to the deeper questions about what it means to exist in a galaxy where massive objects wander through the darkness, where planetary systems are not stable refuges, but temporary configurations that can be disrupted at any time. Rogue planets are common. We've known this theoretically for years, suspected it from observations, confirmed it through recent surveys. The galaxy probably contains billions of them, planets ejected from their birth systems, wandering through interstellar space, invisible and undetected until they pass close to something with light. Most remain in the galactic disk, following roughly circular paths around the galactic centre, like the stars they once orbited. But their individual trajectories are chaotic, determined by their ejection velocities and subsequent gravitational interactions. They don't follow neat, predictable orbits. They drift, wander, occasionally passing through other star systems. Earth has probably been visited by rogue planets before. Over 4.6 billion years, over thousands of passages through the galaxy, the odds are high that the solar system has encountered multiple rogues. Most passed at safe distances, caused no detectable effects, came and went without being noticed by any conscious observers because consciousness didn't exist yet. But some might have caused effects, might have perturbed orbits, triggered asteroid bombardments, changed Earth's climate through gravitational interactions. The geological record might contain evidence, unexplained climate shifts, mass extinctions without obvious causes, periods when Earth's orbit was slightly different from what simple models predict. We can't prove it. The evidence is too subtle, too ambiguous, but it's plausible, and if Nemesis has happened before, it will happen again. This is not a one-time event. This is a normal hazard of living in a galaxy full of wandering planets. Our solar system is not an isolated sanctuary. It's embedded in a galaxy, subject to galactic processes, vulnerable to objects that formed light years away but happened to pass through our neighbourhood. This is humbling. We thought our solar system was ours, was stable, was protected by the vast distances of interstellar space, but space isn't that vast on galactic scales. Stars are separated by light years, but they're all moving, all following orbits around the galactic centre, and occasionally their paths cross. Occasionally a rogue planet ejected from one system drifts into another, and when that happens, when a massive intruder enters a planetary system, the consequences are severe. Not always catastrophic. Nemesis could have been worse, could have passed closer, could have ejected Earth entirely, but always significant. Orbits change, climates change, the stable conditions that allowed life to flourish are disrupted, and life either adapts or goes extinct, depending on how severe the changes are and how much time there is to adapt. Let's think about the other planets, about how they're dealing with Nemesis's passage, because Earth isn't the only affected world. Mars's orbit was changed even more dramatically than Earth's. Mars is less massive, easier to perturb, and Nemesis passed closer to Mars's orbital distance than to Earth's. Mars has been pushed outward by about 15%, from 1.52 AU to 1.75 AU. 15% farther from the Sun means Mars receives about 26% less solar energy. Mars was already cold, already barely habitable even for extremophile microbes. Now it's colder, more hostile, less likely to ever host life, and Mars experienced that massive asteroid impact, the one Nemesis perturbed from the asteroid belt. The crater is visible from Earth, a bright scar on Mars's surface surrounded by ejecta, changing the planet's geography. If Mars ever had subsurface life, microbial ecosystems living in underground aquifers, protected from the harsh surface conditions, that impact might have destroyed them. Or it might have exposed them, brought subsurface material to the surface where we could potentially detect biosignatures. We'll probably never know. We had plans for Mars missions, for sample returns, for eventually sending humans, but those plans are on hold indefinitely. We're too busy dealing with Earth's ice age to worry about exploring Mars. Venus was affected less than Earth, or Mars. It's more massive, resists perturbations better, and Nemesis didn't pass as close. But Venus's orbit was still changed, and Venus is now receiving slightly less solar energy than before. Venus is already hellish, 900-degree surface temperature, crushing atmospheric pressure, sulfuric acid clouds. A slight reduction in solar energy won't make it habitable, but it might, over millions of years, cool the planet slightly, change the dynamics of its runaway greenhouse effect. Not that it matters to us. Venus is and will remain hostile to any life we can imagine. Nemesis's passage is just one more perturbation in Venus's turbulent history, and Jupiter, massive Jupiter, the solar system's guardian, the planet whose gravity has protected Earth from countless asteroid impacts over billions of years, Jupiter was perturbed too. Jupiter's orbit increased by only about 2%, but that's enough. Jupiter's gravitational influence on the asteroid belt has changed. The resonances that kept asteroid orbits stable have shifted. Some asteroids that were in stable orbits for billions of years are now on unstable paths. Over the coming millennia, Jupiter will clear these new resonances, will eject or capture the asteroids that are now in unstable positions. Some will be flung out of the solar system, some will impact Jupiter, and some will be sent toward the inner solar system, toward Earth. We're facing an increased impact rate. not immediately catastrophic but elevated. More asteroids crossing Earth's orbit, more potential impacts, more need for vigilance and deflection capabilities we might not have the resources to maintain while dealing with the Ice Age. Nemesis has made the solar system more dangerous, not just through the direct orbital changes, but through the cascading effects, the destabilizations, the perturbations that will continue for millions of years. Let's talk about time, scales, about how long these effects persist and what that means for life on Earth. Earth's new orbit is stable. It's not going to spontaneously return to 1.0 AU. Without another massive gravitational perturbation, Earth will remain at 1.073 AU for millions or billions of years. That means the Ice Age is permanent. Not in the sense of unchanging, there will be variations, glacial and interglacial periods within the overall Ice Age, but in the sense that Earth will remain colder than it was before Nemesis for geological timescales. Life will adapt, evolution will proceed, species that can tolerate cold will flourish, species that can't will go extinct. Over millions of years, entirely new ecosystems will develop, optimized for Ice Age conditions rather than the warmer climate that existed before. But human civilization won't adapt. Not on timescales of millions of years. Civilizations last thousands of years, not millions. We'll either find ways to survive in the Ice Age or we'll collapse and something else will take our place. And even if we survive, even if we maintain civilization through the Ice Age, we're changed. Our history is now divided into before Nemesis and after Nemesis. Our culture will be shaped by the memory of watching a rogue planet approach, by the experience of having our world's climate destroyed by gravitational forces we couldn't control. We'll be more cautious, probably, more aware of our vulnerability, more focused on detecting rogue planets early, even though we still can't do anything about them if we detect them, and we'll be more motivated to leave Earth, to establish colonies on other worlds, in other star systems, so that no single rogue planet passage can end humanity. We'll want redundancy, distribution, the knowledge that even if Earth freezes, even if the ice covers everything, there are humans elsewhere carrying on our species and our culture. This is one of the gifts of catastrophe: clarity about what matters, motivation to address vulnerabilities we were ignoring, urgency to act on plans we'd been postponing. Nemesis might ultimately make us stronger, if we survive, if we use the experience to drive expansion, rather than letting it crush us into despair. Let's think about consciousness again, about what it means to be aware in a galaxy where planets wander and disrupt each other's stability. You exist on a planet. That planet orbits a star. That orbit has been stable for billions of years, allowing life to evolve, allowing complexity to develop, allowing consciousness to emerge. But that stability is contingent. It depends on the absence of massive perturbations, on the unlikelihood of another planet-mass object passing close enough to disrupt orbits. That unlikelihood is not impossibility. It's just low probability. And over geological timescales, low probability events happen. They're inevitable, eventually. It's just a question of when. Nemesis is your when. Your turn to experience the disruption that's happened to countless other worlds throughout galactic history. Your moment of confronting the fact that your planetary home is not a permanent sanctuary, but a temporary configuration that exists only as long as nothing massive disturbs it. This is profoundly unsettling. You built your civilization on the assumption of orbital stability, of reliable seasons, of predictable climate. And now that assumption is revealed as contingent, vulnerable, subject to disruption by forces beyond your control. But this is also clarifying. You understand now that you're not separate from galactic processes, not exempt from gravitational interactions, not protected by any special status. You're just one world among billions, subject to the same physics, vulnerable to the same threats. And in that understanding, there's a kind of freedom. You stop expecting the universe to be safe, to be friendly, to maintain the conditions you prefer. You accept that you exist in a dynamic, sometimes hostile environment, and you adapt accordingly. The universe doesn't owe you stability. It doesn't promise that the orbit you evolved in will remain unchanged. It just is, following physical law. And sometimes those laws produce outcomes that threaten the stability life requires. You can rage against this, can wish it were different, can grieve for the world that was lost when Nemesis passed through, or you can accept it, can recognize that this is how galaxies work, how planets sometimes interact, how the universe operates without regard for the preferences of conscious beings who happen to exist within it. Acceptance doesn't mean approval, doesn't mean you're happy about the Ice Age or the population crash or the loss of the world you knew, but it does mean you're not wasting energy fighting against unchangeable reality. You're adapting instead, responding, finding ways to survive and perhaps even thrive in the new conditions. Let's drift toward contemplation, now toward accepting rogue planets not as aberrations but as natural features of galactic ecology. The galaxy is old, 13 billion years old roughly. Countless planetary systems have formed, evolved, been disrupted over that time. Rogue planets have been produced by every planetary system, ejected by gravitational interactions, sent wandering through interstellar space. These rogues are not anomalies. They're a natural product of planetary system formation. Not every planet remains bound to its star. Some are ejected, and once ejected, they wander indefinitely until they encounter something. Another star, another planet, a gas cloud, the galactic center's black hole. Most wander without incident. Most never encounter anything significant. They just drift through the darkness, cold and alone, for billions of years. But some encounter star systems. Some pass close enough to affect planetary orbits. Some cause catastrophes like the one Earth is experiencing, and from the galaxy's perspective, this is fine, this is normal, this is just how gravity works at large scales. Planets interact, orbits change, systems that were stable become unstable, life that existed goes extinct or adapts. The galaxy doesn't care, can't care, it's not conscious, not aware, not moral. It just is. A collection of stars and planets and gas and dust following gravitational and electromagnetic laws, producing outcomes that sometimes support life and sometimes destroy it. Nemesis is not punishment, it's not judgment, it's not even unfortunate from any cosmic perspective. It's just physics, gravity acting on mass, an object following its trajectory, an interaction that happened to affect Earth negatively. But that is no different in principle from any other gravitational interaction occurring anywhere in the galaxy. Understanding this doesn't make the Ice Age less real or less devastating. But it does place it in context. You're experiencing one instance of a common galactic phenomenon. You're not special in your suffering. Countless other worlds have probably experienced similar disruptions. Some survived, some didn't. Your story is one among many, and the galaxy will continue producing similar stories for billions of years to come, long after Earth's Ice Age ends, long after humanity is extinct or evolved into something else, long after the sun itself dies. This is both humbling and comforting. Humbling because it removes any sense of special status, any idea that Earth is protected or that your suffering is unique. Comforting because it means you're part of something larger, part of the galactic pattern, part of the ongoing story of matter and energy and gravity shaping the cosmos. Let's think about what happens millions of years from now, after Earth has fully adapted to its new orbit. The Ice Age is permanent, but life continues. Ecosystems have rebuilt, optimized for cold conditions. Forests grow at what were once subtropical latitudes. Tundra extends deep into what were temperate zones. The ice sheets are permanent fixtures at high latitudes, but between the ice and the equator, life flourishes in new forms. Evolution has proceeded. The species that existed before Nemesis are mostly extinct, unable to adapt to the rapid climate change, unable to compete with species better suited to Ice Age conditions. What remains are the cold-adapted survivors and their descendants. And humanity? If we still exist, we're different. Changed by the Ice Age, by the population bottleneck, by millions of years of evolution in a colder world. We might be physiologically different, more cold-tolerant, more efficient metabolically, adapted to the reduced solar energy. Or we might not exist at all as a biological species. We might have transcended biology, uploaded our consciousness to machines that don't care about temperature, that can survive anywhere. Or we might have left Earth entirely, established colonies on other worlds, left the icebound homeworld to whatever species evolved to fill the niches we vacated. Or we might be extinct, failed to survive the population crash, failed to maintain civilization through the Ice Age, gone the way of the dinosaurs and countless other species that couldn't adapt to changing conditions. From the perspective of millions of years hence, Nemesis's passage is a major event in Earth's history, a discontinuity, a moment when everything changed, a boundary between the warm epoch and the cold epoch. But it's not the end of Earth's story, just a chapter. One event among many in a planet's long history. Earth existed for billions of years before Nemesis. It will exist for billions of years after, until the sun expands and consumes it, or until some other cosmic process ends its existence. And throughout that existence, Earth will experience disruptions, asteroid impacts, supernovae, rogue planet passages, each one reshaping the planet, each one causing extinctions and adaptations, each one part of the ongoing dynamic of a world embedded in an active, sometimes violent galaxy. This is the nature of planetary existence, not static, not stable, but dynamic, changing, subject to forces both internal and external, and life, wherever it exists, adapts to those changes or dies. Earth is adapting. Life is adapting. And maybe humanity is adapting too, or maybe we're one of the species that couldn't adapt, that went extinct in the Ice Age, that are now just fossils for future paleontologists, if there are future paleontologists to study and wonder about. Either way, the galaxy continues, the rogue planets continue their wandering, and somewhere, on some other world, orbiting some other star, intelligent beings are looking at their sky and wondering what would happen if a massive object passed through their system. Maybe they'll never know. Maybe they'll be lucky, and no rogue will pass close enough to matter. Or maybe they're watching one approach right now, growing brighter night by night, and understanding what's coming while being helpless to prevent it. The galaxy is full of stories. Earth's encounter with Nemesis is just one. Let's move into the deepest contemplation now, into the space where the horror of Nemesis's passage transforms into acceptance, where the Ice Age becomes part of the larger understanding of what it means to exist on a planet in a galaxy where massive objects wander. We've spent time with Nemesis. We've watched it approach for 18 months, watched it pass through our solar system, watched Earth's orbit change and the Ice Age begin. We've experienced the fear, the helplessness, the grief for a world that no longer exists in the form we knew. Now it's time to integrate this experience, to find peace not through denial, but through perspective, through understanding that what happened to Earth is natural, expected, part of the pattern of planetary existence in a dynamic galaxy. Start with this fundamental truth. Nothing is permanent. Not your individual life, that was always temporary. Not your civilization. All civilizations eventually end. Not even your planet's orbit. As Nemesis demonstrated, even something as seemingly stable as a planetary orbit can be changed by gravitational interactions. The universe is dynamic. Everything moves, everything interacts, everything changes. The static picture of the solar system you learned in school, planets in fixed orbits, eternal and unchanging, was always a simplification, an approximation valid on short timescales, but not on geological or cosmic timescales. Over billions of years, orbits drift. Gravitational interactions between planets cause small perturbations that accumulate. The solar system's configuration today is different from what it was a billion years ago, and different from what it will be a billion years from now. Nemesis just accelerated a process that was always happening, changed Earth's orbit suddenly rather than gradually, made the impermanence obvious rather than subtle, and in that obviousness there's a teaching. You can't take stability for granted, can't assume the conditions that support you will persist indefinitely, can't build your civilization on the assumption of permanent habitability. The universe doesn't promise permanence, it promises change. And life, consciousness, civilization, these exist in the brief windows when conditions allow, adapting as those conditions shift, ending when they shift too far too fast. Let's think about the visual experience of watching Nemesis, because this is what made the threat so visceral, so impossible to ignore. For 18 months you could look up and see the object that was destroying your world, not metaphorically, not abstractly, but literally. There it was in the sky, growing brighter and larger night after night, a visual reminder of approaching catastrophe. This is different from invisible threats. You can ignore things you can't, seek and pretend they're not real, can maintain denial, but you can't ignore something in the sky that's visible to everyone, that's growing, that's clearly approaching. Nemesis forced awareness, forced confrontation with reality. You couldn't pretend it wasn't happening because you could see it happening. Every clear night there it was, every week noticeably larger, every month brighter. And the size, at closest approach, Nemesis appeared larger in the sky than any planet normally appears from Earth. Larger than Jupiter as seen through a telescope. Large enough that you could see it as a disk with the naked eye, could watch it transit across the stars, could observe it with a degree of detail normally reserved for the moon. It was beautiful in a terrible way. A reddish-brown sphere banded with atmospheric features, glowing faintly from internal heat. An alien world, revealed in detail, hanging in your sky where it didn't belong. Some people couldn't stop watching it, obsessively tracking its position, photographing it, measuring its apparent size, as if by watching closely enough they could understand it, could make it less threatening through observation. Others couldn't bear to look, covered their windows at night, avoided going outside when Nemesis was visible, tried to pretend it wasn't there even though everyone was talking about it, even though it was affecting their world regardless of whether they acknowledged it. And now it's gone. Faded back to invisibility. Disappeared into the darkness from which it came. The sky looks normal again. The stars are the same. Only the climate is different. Only Earth's orbit has changed. But the memory remains. The memory of watching a massive object approach, of seeing the instrument of your world's transformation grow in the sky night after night, of being forced to confront your vulnerability through direct visual observation. That memory will shape humanity for as long as humanity exists. We'll tell stories about Nemesis, about the Wanderer, about the Intruder, about the object that came from the darkness and changed everything. And maybe those stories will help future generations remember that the sky's not always benign, that space contains dangers, that vigilance matters even when threats are invisible most of the time. Let's talk about what could have been different, about the randomness that determined how severe Nemesis's effects were. Nemesis's trajectory was determined by its ejection from wherever it originated, by its motion through the galaxy over billions of years, by countless small gravitational interactions that nudged it this way or that. And by pure chance, that trajectory brought it through our solar system at a particular angle, at a particular speed, passing at a particular distance from each planet. If any of those parameters had been slightly different, the effects would have been different. If Nemesis had passed 6 AU from the Sun instead of 4.8 AU, Earth's orbital change would have been smaller, maybe 5% instead of 7%. Still an ice age, but less severe, more survivable. If it had passed at 3 AU, closer than it did, Earth's orbit might have been changed by 15% or 20%, too far from the Sun, a snowball Earth scenario, possibly extinction of all surface life. If it had passed at the wrong angle, if it had come through the plane of the solar system at a different position, it might have ejected Earth entirely. Flung our planet into interstellar space on a trajectory that would never return to the Sun. Permanent darkness, permanent cold, absolute extinction. The difference between severe ice age and total extinction was a matter of a few AU, a few million kilometres in a trajectory that spans light years, a tiny variation in angle or timing. We were lucky. Not lucky enough to avoid catastrophe. Earth is freezing, billions are dying, but lucky enough to survive. Lucky that Nemesis's passage was bad, but not maximally bad. This is the nature of cosmic threats. Their severity depends on details you can't control, on variables determined by processes that happened long before you existed. The same rogue planet that causes an ice age on one pass might cause extinction on a slightly different trajectory, and there's nothing you can do about those variables. You get what you get. You deal with the hand cosmic chance deals you. Earth got a survivable catastrophe, barely survivable, devastating, world-changing, but survivable. And maybe that's enough. Let's think about meaning one more time, from the perspective of living through a slow, visible apocalypse. When you can see the threat approaching for months, when you watch it grow in the sky night after night, when you know exactly what's going to happen and when, how do you find meaning in that experience? Some found meaning in witnessing, in being present for this extraordinary event, in observing and documenting Nemesis's passage, in being part of the generation that experienced something unprecedented in recorded history. There's value in that. In bearing witness to significant events. In being the observers who can tell future generations, we were there, we saw it, this is what it was like. Others found meaning in connection, in coming together with family, with friends, with strangers who were experiencing the same fear and uncertainty, in finding comfort in shared experience, in not being alone in facing the catastrophe. Some found meaning in work, in continuing to do their jobs despite the approaching disaster. Teachers teaching, doctors healing, scientists researching, finding purpose in the doing, in maintaining civilization for as long as possible, in not surrendering to despair. And some found meaning in acceptance, in recognizing that Nemesis was beyond their control, that the Ice Age was coming regardless of what they did, and that the appropriate response was to be present for whatever time remained of the old world. All of these are valid. All of these are human responses to extraordinary circumstances, and all of them acknowledge a fundamental truth. Meaning doesn't come from external circumstances. It comes from how you respond to those circumstances, from what you choose to value, from how you engage with reality as it is rather than as you wish it were. Nemesis can change Earth's orbit. It can trigger an ice age. It can kill billions. But it can't eliminate meaning unless you let it. Meaning exists in consciousness, in awareness, in the choices conscious beings make about what matters, and you're still conscious, still aware, still capable of choosing what matters to you. The Ice Age doesn't change that. The approaching cold doesn't eliminate your ability to love, to learn, to create, to connect. It just changes the context in which you do those things. You can find meaning in an Ice Age just as you found meaning before Nemesis arrived. Different meaning perhaps, shaped by different circumstances, but real nonetheless. Let's drift into silence now, into the quiet acceptance that comes when understanding becomes peace. You know about rogue planets. You understand gravitational interactions, orbital mechanics, the cascading effects of a massive object passing through a planetary system. You've experienced Nemesis's approach, its passage, the beginning of Earth's Ice Age, and you can let it settle now, not forget. This is too significant to forget, but release the emotional intensity. Let the knowledge take its place alongside everything else you know about living in a dynamic, sometimes hostile universe. Nemesis came, Nemesis passed, Earth is changed, and life continues, adapting to new conditions, finding new equilibria, persisting because that's what life does. The sky is clear again, the stars are the same. The rogue planet that dominated your awareness for 18 months is gone, invisible, receding into the darkness, but its effects remain. Will remain for millions of years, will shape Earth's climate, Earth's ecosystems, Earth's evolutionary trajectory for longer than human civilization has existed. You're living in the new reality, the after-Nemesis world, and you're adapting, because adaptation is the only option. Be at peace with the change, not through accepting it as good. It's not good. It's catastrophic for billions of people and countless other species, but through accepting it as real, as unchangeable, as the new context in which life occurs. The universe is vast and old and full of wandering planets. Earth encountered one. It won't be the last. Over the remaining billions of years of Earth's existence, other rogues will pass through the solar system. Some will cause effects, some won't. This is normal. This is how galaxies work. You exist in the brief window when Earth is habitable, when conditions support complex life, when consciousness is possible. That window was always temporary. Nemesis just made it shorter, made it colder, changed when and how it will close. But the window is still open. You're still here, still conscious, still capable of experiencing and understanding and creating meaning. Sleep now, or wake, or continue your day, carrying this understanding lightly. The rogue planet passed. The Ice Age is here. Humanity is surviving, barely, transformed by the experience. And in that survival, in that transformation, in that persistence despite catastrophic change, there's something worth acknowledging: resilience, adaptability, the refusal to surrender even when the universe makes clear that it doesn't care about your survival. The galaxy is indifferent. Nemesis was indifferent. The laws of physics that govern orbital mechanics are indifferent. But you're not indifferent. You care. You grieve for what was lost. You work to preserve what can be preserved. You find meaning in the struggle even when the outcome is uncertain. That caring, that effort, that meaning-making. It's what consciousness does. It's what makes you different from the rogue planets and the gravitational fields and the cold equations that determine orbital mechanics. You're aware. You experience. You create value through your awareness even when the universe provides no value, no meaning, no purpose beyond the mechanical unfolding of physical law. The universe produced you through stars and planets and billions of years of evolution. And now you're here, experiencing what it's like to have your planetary home disrupted by gravitational forces, to watch a rogue planet pass through your solar system, to survive an ice age caused by orbital perturbation. This experience is real. It's significant. It's part of what the universe can produce when consciousness emerges and faces cosmic scale challenges. And you're present for it, aware of it, capable of understanding what happened and why, even if you couldn't prevent it. That understanding doesn't save you from the cold, doesn't bring back the world that existed before Nemesis, but it does give you perspective, gives you the ability to see your experience as part of a larger pattern, as one instance of phenomena that occur throughout the galaxy whenever massive objects pass near planetary systems. You're participating in galactic ecology, not by choice. You'd prefer not to be participating, but you are nonetheless. And there's a kind of dignity in that participation, in being conscious and aware while experiencing forces that operate on cosmic scales. Rest in that dignity, in the awareness that you're more than just matter being pushed around by gravity. You're conscious matter, matter that knows what's happening to it, matter that can understand stellar dynamics and orbital mechanics and gravitational interactions. The rogue planet doesn't understand anything. It's just following its trajectory, responding to gravitational forces moving through space according to the laws of motion. But you understand. You can comprehend what the rogue planet is, why it perturbed Earth's orbit, what the consequences are. And that comprehension, that awareness, is precious even when it can't prevent the catastrophe you're comprehending. Be grateful for the awareness, not for the Ice Age. There's nothing to be grateful for there, but for the consciousness that allows you to understand, to experience, to find meaning even in catastrophe. The universe is vast and cold and mostly unconscious. Stars burn without knowing. Planets orbit without awareness. Rogue worlds wander without comprehension. But you're conscious. You know. You experience. And in that knowing and experiencing, the universe achieves something extraordinary. Awareness of itself. Nemesis is part of the universe. You're part of the universe. And through you, the universe is aware of Nemesis, is experiencing the encounter between rogue planet and inhabited world, is comprehending gravitational interactions that it otherwise performs unconsciously. This is the gift and burden of consciousness. To know, to understand, to experience both the beauty and the horror of the cosmos from the inside. You are that knowing, that understanding, that experience, for as long as you persist, for as long as Earth remains habitable enough to support consciousness. And when consciousness ends on Earth, whether from the Ice Age, from some other catastrophe, or eventually from the Sun's death, it will have been real, will have existed, will have been a genuine phenomenon, not negated by its ending. Nemesis can change Earth's orbit, can trigger an ice age, can cause extinction, but it can't erase the fact that consciousness existed here, that awareness occurred, that for a time the universe knew itself through human minds, that knowing is complete in each moment, doesn't require continuation to be valuable, just needs to happen, which it did, which it does right now. Be here for that happening, for the consciousness that persists despite the cold, for the awareness that continues despite the catastrophe, for the meaning that exists regardless of whether the universe provides meaning, the rogue planet and the conscious beings it affected, both temporary, both part of the cosmic story, both real and significant in their brief existence, accept both, the wanderer and the inhabitants, the gravitational disruption and the awareness of disruption, the changed orbit and the consciousness that experiences living on a world whose orbit has changed. This is reality, complete, unfiltered, both the mechanics of orbital perturbation and the experience of living through it. Be present for all of it, the physics and the consciousness, the gravitational forces and the meaning-making, the cosmic indifference and the human caring. The galaxy is vast and ancient and full of wandering worlds. You're one consciousness among countless others, experiencing one instance of a common phenomenon, adapting as best you can to circumstances beyond your control. That's enough. That's everything. The rogue planet passed. The consciousness remains, and in that remaining, in that persistence, in that continued awareness despite catastrophic change, the universe achieves its most remarkable feat, knowing itself, experiencing itself, creating meaning from matter and energy in the strange phenomenon of consciousness. You are that meaning, that knowing, that experience, for now, for as long as now lasts, for as long as Earth remains habitable enough to support the improbable emergence of awareness, which is still now, still this moment, still the extraordinary fact of being conscious in a galaxy where planets wander and orbits change and ice ages begin. Rest in that fact, in the reality of present awareness, in the experience of being here, now, conscious despite everything. The wanderer is gone, the consciousness persists, and that persistence, brief and fragile as it is worth acknowledging, worth experiencing, worth being present for as long as presence is possible, which is always only now, which is always enough.